Friends, today we're going to do something a little bit different. Mike and I have been out all day in and around the general San Francisco Bay Area. We have been shooting the 2017 Mazda CX-9, and we've had a very full day, as you can tell by the sun setting over there. So while we work on the full first drive review, which is actually done at this point, we've got some surprises. One really cool surprise, and actually two cool surprises. Why don't you and I do just a quick tech review in one of my absolute favorite places in the city by the bay, San Francisco, which is Crissy Fields. You can see all the runners here. For those of you that know me, I'm a major distance runner. I'm dealing with a running injury right now, but I am a distance runner, so I figured to come here and soak it all in, and then you and I could go through the tech review of this. And let's start where we always start, with the exception of in McLaren films. Let's start at the engine. Okay, so putting aside the California Republic and the city by the bay, and you know, come on now. That is a stunning view, especially at magic hour. We're going to dive into SkyActiv engines. Now, if I were a betting man, I would put money on the fact that none of you are CX-9 aficionados. You probably don't even remember the car that came before this one. It was the last Mazda to be based on a Ford platform, and if you remember, Ford had significant control over Mazda for like 30 years. It is also the last one to get SkyActiv, so here we are, we finally have SkyActiv. Now, we did cover SkyActiv in a episode with Mean Gene where he put a Mazda 6 on the rack and he went through everything, and this is not like marketing mumbo jumbo crap, but SkyActiv is more than just the way they build engines, more than construction of the vehicle. It's actually an ethos in the approach to design, engineer, and building cars. So definitely check out that episode because Mean Gene pulls out like pistons from a Packard to show you what goes into these things. Anyway, I digress. So let's put aside horsepower for a minute. Let's just focus on torque. So this, you can get any engine you want as long as it is 2.5, 4-cylinder, turbocharged, direct injected gasoline engine like this one. Now, previously you can get a V6. Now you can't. And this puts out 310 pound-feet of torque. Sounds great, right? Comes in at 2,000 RPM. Even better, especially when you consider it's a small 4-cylinder. But look at the size of this thing. This is not a small vehicle. This is like a kind of a visual trick here. It's actually almost 200 inches in wheelbase. That's like bigger than some other like SUVs and CUVs out there. But then it's like 4,000 pounds, but you only have a 4-cylinder here. So what's Mazda thinking? Now, here's where things get a little strange, because the whole thing with this vehicle is a totally different approach, not just with the SkyActiv, but yet another different approach, and we're going to cover this in the full first drive review. Now, I want to prove something here. We're in California, right? So in California, you can't get 93 octane. You can get up to 91. So let's say, for the sake of discussion, I wasn't in California and you pumped in 93 octane, which you can get in the greatest city in the world. That would be 250 horsepower, which comes in at a relatively high engine speed, 5,000 RPM. But here, if you were to pump in 87, which most people who are going to drive a 3-row crossover to put their Rugrats in here, they're gonna frankly put in 87 octane. If they're really being honest, well, that's 227 horsepower, which comes in at also 5,000 RPM. Now, there's a couple of other interesting things going on here. You guys remember Dave Coleman? Very, very cool engineer guy at Mazda, also loves to race cars, and frankly, probably one of the coolest guys, car guys at least in the world, because he got married on the track, on the corkscrew at Laguna Seca. I've shared this with you before, but I want to remind you because it is so cool. Anyway, there are two interesting things going on here. Number one, the way the air gets into the engine. It's done in a unique way in that the air goes in one of two ways, and think of it as like a Venturi effect. So you've got the intake manifold, the air goes in to this like either a small vent or a bigger vent. And the idea is when you need air being pushed in as fast as possible, the vent, it goes through the smaller vent, creating like a Venturi effect to speed up the air. So think of it like a ram air, kind of like ram air, late stage ram air, let's call it like that, because I'm a Pontiac guy. Anyway, and then there's the bigger size of the vent, and that's once the thing is up to speed and it doesn't need to get air in as fast as possible. So basically the idea is to kind of cool the engine. But then on the opposite side of it, on the exhaust, the whole idea there is how do you get basically the expended energy out of the engine? How do you basically get it out quick enough to cool down the engine to maintain a high compression ratio? Because the reality is, this is more like a diesel engine where it's engineered to a higher tolerance, thus a higher compression ratio. So what they're doing is they're trying to get the spent energy, basically that exhaust gas, which is hotter, out of the cylinder faster so they can get cooler air into the cylinder faster. And the way they do that is, instead of having the runners, basically the exhaust manifold, one runner for each cylinder, what they're doing is they're pairing it. And the idea there, and the best way to describe this, is like an airbrush. So they have like 1 and 3 together, or 2 and 4 together. So when the air is coming out of 1, it's going past the air coming out of 3. And when you have that air being pushed out of 1, it literally pulls the air out of 3. Get it? I know this is somewhat complex, and maybe I'll have someone else describe this to you, because there's a lot going on here. Anyway, now we need to press on to like driving dynamics, because I think I've beaten this horse to death here with this engine. Now, driving dynamics is not as much of a departure as all the technology underneath the engine. This is based on the same architecture that the CX-5 is based on. So remember we drove the CX-3? That's one platform architecture that the Mazda 2 in other countries, remember that Scion IA that we drove? That's one sort of architecture. Then there's the CX-5 and the Mazda 3, and basically that's what this is based off of. And you're probably thinking, well, this is a much bigger vehicle than those. Well, it is. And so it's not a platform like the stampings are the same. What they've done is the design, the general idea. So you've got McPherson struts here, and then back here, you've got a multi-link unit, but all the pieces are different. They're bigger to support a bigger, heavier vehicle that has more power and more torque, and frankly, 3 rows, so you can have more people in the thing. So a couple of things going on here. It's an all-wheel drive system, so you can get it as front-wheel drive, but this is like the super-duper signature model that's got fitted with the all-wheel drive system, and it's similar to the CX-3 in that they call it this predictive model, and basically what they do is, like, for example, you got pavement here, right? But if we were to go over here, we got sand and we got grass. Well, there are up to 27 different input points. So the input points could be like, does this wheel slip when it hits the sand? Or are the windshield wipers on? That basically tells the car it's raining. Or steering input, or speed of the vehicle, or even temperature, because there's a temperature gauge in this thing. And it takes all of that, and what it does is it takes the predictive algorithm that the engineers have programmed into this thing and saying, okay, well, with all these inputs, the vehicle is now in slip mode, so let's be predictive about it as opposed to reactive. Get it? So now that's all the technology stuff, and we're going to cover more of this in the full first drive review. But now we got to get to the stuff, the part that I hate, but really the business end of this vehicle. Okay, so this is not exactly my favorite part. I can't say that I have any children, at least none that I know of. But for the sake of science, let's try this thing out. 3 rows, right? So this kind of tilts forward, and from what I understand, they slimmed this down here. I'm gonna go back here, try to get my butt in the back. Actually sort of fit. Let's put this back here. Hopefully I don't get killed. And I think that's how someone would sit. You know, you can move the seat forward and you wouldn't actually, there's plenty of room this way. But if it's like this one here, there is absolutely no way I could fit. But then again, I'm 6 foot and this is more for rugrats. But you get the point. Let's press on. Okay, I know last week I was able to get in and out of that McLaren somewhat gracefully, but this, not so. So I'm not doing it again. So with that, what do we got? Well, a completely different approach to building cars, but I'm kind of like jumping the gun here because we're going to talk about that in the full first drive review. So you make sure you come back for that. But really what this is, it's a completely different approach to building cars, but more of a function on how power is delivered and how you use it in cities like this, or frankly, when I go for runs like that. But the reality is, it's unlike anything you and I have looked at in the past. So we're gonna have a very interesting full first drive review episode, but also I'm gonna bring on a special guest for another episode on this thing to go on a deep dive on some of that tech stuff that I've been talking about. So with that, I think we have completely run out of light here because we've been shooting literally all day. It's been a fantastic day here in the city by the bay, and now the lights are coming on the bridge here. So I think Mike and I are going to wrap up here, probably go get some dinner, maybe something that involves sourdough bread and seafood. So I want to turn this around to you guys and leave you guys with a question. So in the full first drive review, we're going to talk about that CX-9. But as a preamble, let's talk about the segment. And I want to leave you with a very specific question. So what is your favorite or your preferred vehicle in this segment? And when I say this segment, I mean like a crossover SUV in like the premium world or something in the luxury world, because this one starts at like 32 grand and goes all the way up to like 44 grand for the one you see over there. So don't just tell me which one is the one you like the best, but why you like it, what region of the world you live in, and most importantly, what do you do with it? Like, do you just put Rugrats in it, or do you take it to Home Depot? Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV, all one word, MotoManTV, all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I want to leave you with two things. Make sure you download our fancy new mobile application, which you can download for free at Apple iTunes and Google Play. And number two, I want to leave you with a fun fact. So I told you that I am a distance runner, like this gentleman running past us here. There is a race that happens every year just over there in San Francisco that is called the Bay to Breakers. And the reason why it is interesting is not the distance, because the distance isn't very long, but it is the only race where the race organizers have to threaten the participants to make sure that they actually wear clothes during the race. True story, look it up. Until I see you next time, bis später.